Masculinity is under attack from all angles. And when I saw this article and I actually listened to the gentleman that you see in the screen here, his name's Kyle Ganson. When I listened to what they were talking about, it just sounded like another attack on masculinity. This time, we're talking about muscle dysphoria and how it's connecting and affecting young Canadian boys and young men. Now, I know muscle dysphoria is a real thing, but what they're talking about is a healthy human being. So let's just get into it. I don't like to interrupt clips, but it's going to be hard not to interrupt Kyle right now. All right. So let's just get right into it. Let's listen to what Kyle has to say about muscle dysphoria. Actually, hold on. Let me just give you the website real quick. This is the website. New study highlights increasing prevalence of muscle dysphoria among young Canadian boys, young men. Canadian researchers are drawing attention to the increasing prevalence of a pathological pursuit of muscularity among Canadian boys and young men. A new study found that one in four were at risk of developing what's known as muscle dysphoria. Now, when you see what he's saying that this is, it sounds absolutely ridiculous. The study published on January 17th said that, I can't even believe this thing got published, said that Canadian healthcare professionals should be alerted to the high occurrence of muscle dysphoria symptoms in the population. Now, they're saying symptoms because the study they did actually cannot diagnose muscle dysphoria. So it's odd that they're using the term so much when they couldn't even actually diagnose any of the people that they ran through tests as having muscle dysphoria. So muscle dysphoria is the obsession with muscle size and definition resulting in distress and a significant drive. Let's do away with drive for muscularity. The study said some symptoms include compulsive exercise, excessive diet to build and maintain muscle, use of appearance and performance enhancing drugs and substances, and disruptions to daily life. Now, obviously, if someone's using steroids, if someone's on that Liver King diet, then obviously that's a problem. But the other things that they're saying, a compulsion to exercise, you can say I have a compulsion to exercise. I exercise 5 days a week, sometimes 6. Like with the parameters that they're setting up for muscle dysphoria, you could say anybody who's a healthy man who likes to exercise and look good has it. And I think this is just because the thing about it is when I get into this, what he's actually saying, he wants healthcare professionals and the government to get involved in what's going on with young men, which is them exercising. So what's that going to result in? Now, I don't want to, here it is. Here's my little tinfoil hat. What's that going to result in? Gym closures, people not being able to exercise as much, if you exercise a lot, have high testosterone and oppose what some entity is telling you, all of a sudden you could be classified as having a mental health condition, according to Kyle Ganson. This is getting a little crazy. Let me just hit this clip. Let's go.
Dysmorphia is a specifier of body dysmorphic disorder, so it actually is not an eating disorder, and it doesn't even fall in the feeding and eating disorders classification in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. So it actually falls into an obsessive compulsive disorder. There is definitely conversation in the literature about whether or not that's the right thing or the wrong thing, but that's for another conversation. But basically what it is characterized by generally like the pathological pursuit of muscularity. So it's commonly or like colloquially known as like, reverse anorexia. So instead of driving for thinness, there's an intense drive for muscularity. And like generally it's like bulk muscularity, significant strength. It can be about like lean and cut, sort of very defined features. So that's sort of the preoccupation is consistent desires for muscularity. And that obviously includes issues around like functional impairment, just like an eating disorder would include like someone's drive for thinness or sort of eating disorder behaviors like restricting or, binging and purging would sort of create, functional impairment for them in their life, like whether it be their occupation or social life. The intensity of going to the gym or the intensity of different food rules and different food behaviors, again, for muscularity purposes, also impedes on functioning and also creates like pathological thinking styles, like significant anxiety if one misses one's workout, like things of that nature. And another common feature is generally that even though people, and again, this is a somewhat similar experience for people with eating disorders like anorexia, for example, um, even though the person is generally actually of quote unquote like normal stature or actually might be quite large, quite muscular, they perceive themselves to be not muscular enough. And so that continues the perpetuating factors of needing to kind of increase muscle mass, increase tone, strength, and again, like perpetuates different behaviors that they may engage in.
And when you say
That's the big thing. You see that the behaviors that they might participate in. What's going to happen? Again, I'll say it again. What's going to happen if you are a fit man and your testosterone's going through the roof? Not even through the roof. It's just normal. It's not raging. It's just you're a normal man. What's going to happen? Well, men who have high testosterone are less agreeable. That's just fact. When you're less agreeable, you're more likely to stand up against someone else's opinion. Again, I'm not going to put the tinfoil hat on, but you're more likely to stand up to someone else's opinion. This could be anyone. This can be government. This can be a friend. This can be in debate. This could be anything, right? But that first one I mentioned, this is crazy. When does this stop? Like how far, like right now he's trying to classify young men who look at themselves and go, I could be better. I could be better. And then who's classifying what's good and what's not? So it's like right now I'm muscular. I'm a muscular person. But if I want to get not even bigger, but if I want to lose some weight, if I want to get a little denser, if I want my chest to stick out more, all of a sudden I have some compulsion. I have some problem. I have a mental health issue. When does this stop? Like we're all on this ride. First it's Dr. Peterson and it's like pronouns and stuff. And then then all of a sudden, like I did a video yesterday, Stanford, words that you can and cannot say. Now all of a sudden it's like if you work out too much, you have a health problem. You have significant drive. The fact that you have significant drive, sir, is leading us to think that you might have a mental health issue. Wow. So what do you want? You want me to have no drive? We would like little to no drive. Yes, please. And thank you. What is going on right now? Again, I know muscle dysphoria, or I don't even care. Okay. I mispronounce words, guys. Get over it. I know that it's an actual thing, and I know it's an actual problem with people who are participating in using performance-enhancing drugs, taking steroids, cycling constantly, never getting off of a cycle, always hitting the different things that people hit. I don't even want to mention them because I don't know what'll happen. But what they're describing, because they're not this, again, keep in mind, these studies that they did, these were not people that were taking steroids. These were people like you and me who just work out. They just work out 5 times a week, and they are being put into a category of possibly being diagnosed with a mental health. I'm getting too excited because it's crazy. It's just crazy. And again, I always ask the questions that go past what I'm seeing. So where does that lead? Where does that lead people? All of a sudden, you work out too much. You have a lot of drive. You're a very strong man. And now all of a sudden, it's like, well, that's a problem. That's basically what they're saying. You have drive. You have strength. You have ability. That's an issue. You have a little bit too much of that. And then also from other corners of the world, it's like, well, eat less meat. You don't really need eggs. Things that are good for certain things that are good sources of protein and fat and help you with keeping muscle. Things that help you with your hormones, cholesterol in the eggs. People diagnosing dairy as being like one of the worst things to put in your body, even though it's actually very good for you and a great source of protein. This is getting crazy. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I'm gonna play the rest of the clip. Actually, not the rest of it because it's 20 minutes, but I'm gonna play this other part.
Say functional impairment, you just generally mean disruptions to a person's daily life.
Disruptions to their daily life, their occupational life, their social functioning, their mental health, things of that nature. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. When this study was taken from a survey,
Mm-hmm.
and I want you to talk about what the most surprising thing going through this and writing with all of your co-authors
Mm-hmm.
this article. What stood out to you? What was kind of shocking?
Sure, yeah. So I think there's I always sort of caveat a little bit of the research for one particular purpose, which is that it's not a population-based survey. So we
Mhm.
didn't get a nationally representative sample of people in Canada. That being said, it's a very diverse sample, so it actually has lots of diversity across races and ethnicities. There's a pretty wide gender diversity as well. There's a fair amount of people who don't identify as cisgender male or female, which is really good. And also, we did get people from all 13 provinces and territories. So we
Okay,
did get people from everywhere, which is really
good.
amazing. And in our analysis, we actually looked at comparisons between like population in the survey based on postal codes and like population based on like different provinces. And they do actually line up quite closely in their sort of kind of alignment. So while again, it's not population based, nationally representative, it's actually quite close to the sort of population we would expect in Canada. So that's a
Mhm.
caveat I always say. And that's important context just to understand what I'm going to say that's most surprising is that, so we use a tool called the Muscle Dysmorphic Disorder Inventory. It's like a very, very widely used measurement tool that looks at symptomology of muscle dysmorphia. And there has been some research trying to create like a cutoff. So like where do we when you score this measurement tool on different people, what's the cutoff of if you score like 10 or higher or 20 or higher on the tool, like what reaches clinical significance? And so that number for this tool is 40 or more. And so I was quite surprised, and I think some of us on the team were quite surprised about the fact that males, like cisgender boys and men, were there was 25% of them who were at clinical risk for muscle dysmorphia. So again, something that I think, while we're surprised by it, I also think we're not surprised by it at the same time because we know that like social norms, social ideals for males, young boys and men are like muscularity, build muscle, go to the gym, look strong, have this big V-shaped body. Um, and we see that in popular culture all the time. So on the one hand, it's very surprising because like, wow, that's a quarter of the people in the sample. But on the other hand, it's like not super surprising just because we know that this data, that this sort of the situation, right, the context, social context is one where this type of body image is very, very much pressured for boys and men.
Mhm.
So that is probably like the biggest surprise. And I think it also needs to be contextualized by the fact like there's very few studies that have looked at like muscle dysmorphia, like the symptomology of it among like the quote unquote general population. So
Mhm.
most of the research is kind of subsect in like college populations or bodybuilders or like gym goers. And so, I mean, certainly there were gym goers in my sample, like definitely. But it's the fact that it reached such a broad cast of sort of locations, different diversities and identities, that we still captured like a fairly high percentage of people that met that clinical significance. And so, yeah, that to me is probably the biggest takeaway. And it just shines light on the fact that we can't continue to overlook, this sort of condition, right? Muscle dysmorphia. Again, we can't diagnose these people as having muscle dysmorphia, certainly,
Mhm.
but the fact that they met that clinical severity of muscle dysmorphia symptomology shows that we need to be not only funding research on this, not only getting clinicians and public health providers and professionals like informed about this disorder, but also make sure there's readily available treatment, make sure people feel comfortable screening for it, know what to do if they do sense that someone is maybe experiencing this significant disorder or symptomology, and yeah, and just focusing more on it as a potential public health problem.
A potential public health problem. So this is what's going to happen, right? The same way that a doctor can't just tell you that you're fat. If you're like obese, a doctor can't look at you and say you should lose weight because that's like offensive now. Now what's going to happen is the opposite end. You're going to have a young guy who likes working out, and they're going to be like, well, we want you to stop working out so much. So you can't call people, doctors are going to be in a position where they can't tell people that they're fat, and they're going to have to start telling people to work out less. What kind of world are we trying to form with this kind of stuff? What kind of world? What kind of men, even more so, what kind of men are we trying to form in this world by doing this? This is absolutely wild. Just wild. Guy's name is Kyle Ganson. He's a researcher. Looks like a cool enough guy. Like, he has spacers in and everything. He looks like a cool guy. It looks like he's somebody I'd do mushrooms with, you know? Maybe. We definitely wouldn't work out together. 100% not. But this is just wild. Again, where does it all lead? That's what I see. Every time I see stuff like this, it's like, where does this go? Where does this go? Potential public health problem. Whew. I'm out.